แรกวันนี้ค่ะเราขอนำท่านผู้มีเกียรติทุกท่านมาติดตามกันในช่วงของ Panel Discussion กับหัวข้อ Business Brotherhood Big Corporate and Startup ค่ะซึ่งหัวข้อนี้จะไปเจาะลึกและก็อินไซต์ในเรื่องของอะไรบ้างนะคะจะทำให้ทุกท่านได้เห็นภาพและเข้าใจการทำงานระหว่างสตาร์ทอัพหน้าใหม่กับบริษัทยักษ์ใหญ่ให้มากขึ้นผ่านประสบการณ์ของผู้บริหารจากองค์กรชั้นนำระดับโลกค่ะเพราะฉะนั้นแล้วเราไปพบกับทุกท่านบนเวทีกันดีกว่านะคะ So ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming our panelists on the stage. And first up, we are honored with a present from Mr. Toshiya Matsuo, Executive Manager, Transcosmos in Japan. Second up on the stage, please welcome Mr. Oleg Brodt, R&D Director, Deutsche Telekom Innovation Lab, Israel. And next up on the stage, please welcome Ms. Suphaporn Chaimongkoltrakul, Joint General Manager, Mizuho Bank, Japan. And esteemed moderator, please welcome Mr. Tuchinda, Director, Suphaporn, Thailand. ขออนุญาตส่งมอบเวทีนี้ให้กับทุกท่านค่ะ
Hi, good morning. Okay, I think this is a very interesting topic, talk about big brotherhood and the corporate startup, because we all know that the corporate is very much in for the profit or for the maximize their shareholder value, whereas the startup pretty much changing the world. So they are less interested in making a lot of money at the beginning, hopefully, but try to do something different. And I think these two cultures are not alike. And luckily today we have three panelists coming from three different industries and two different countries. Perhaps they can share with us of how they work with startup, because all of them had some level of interaction with startup one way or the other. And let's hear on what, why, and how from this. But before we start, maybe we understand a little bit about the background of each of the speakers, of what the companies and background, so at least we understand. Should we starting from Mr. Tommy? Oh. Yeah, please.
Good morning. This is Toshiya Matsuo, just call me as a Tommy. Yeah, so I came from the, I think this is a friend slide. I came from the Transcosmos, which is a leading company of the BPO service provider, not only Japan and also globally. The headquarters office in Japan is listed in the Tokyo stock market, and more than 50,000 staffs are working together under the Transcosmos group as a globally. Yeah, so today's session, how our company cooperate with the startup company, and how get really good synergy from the startup company. We are providing, as I mentioned, BPO service, but really focusing on the technology side. Yeah, so we are providing technology side and cooperate with many startup company. We invested more than 30 companies as a globally, especially in the ASEAN. So these around 2 years, we invested around 10 companies here in the regions, many industries like online solution service, and also the e-publishing company here in Thailand, and so on. Yeah, today, I will talk about how we can cooperate with a startup company. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, may I hear from Mr. Oleg?
Hi, good morning and thanks for coming. So my name is Oleg Brodt. I'm running the R&D. I'm actually the R&D director for Deutsche Telekom Innovation Laboratories in Israel at Ben-Gurion University. I'm also running the R&D for the Cybersecurity Research Center of the National Cybersecurity Bureau in Israel in collaboration with Ben-Gurion University. And in the capacity of Deutsche Telekom, what Deutsche Telekom actually does with universities, they collaborate with 3 universities around the world. One of them is TU Berlin, which is Technological University of Berlin, one of the prominent universities in Europe in terms of technology. The other university they're collaborating with is Stanford University. They're a joint venture in Silicon Valley. And the third one is Ben Gurion University, where the university actually develops technological IP for Deutsche Telekom, some of which is being spinned out. This is into startups. This way they're establishing new startups for technologies they are interested in. And additional tracks of innovation for Deutsche Telekom is also partnerships. They're looking for partnerships with startups, and they also act as a corporate VC. So there are many various tracks they choose to take where they are talking about startups in terms of numbers of the company, if you're not familiar with them. So it's a huge telecom company. They have presence in many, many countries. In terms of revenues, last year, their revenues were above 72 billion euros with the B. In terms of employees, they have around 250,000 employees worldwide. So they have a global presence, and they're scouting for new technology in these different tracks that we can discuss further during the panel. Thank you.
Suphaporn, please.
Hi. So this. Okay. You may know about the Mizuho Bank. We are one of the largest bank in Japan. Also, one of the largest bank in the world. Also, so we actually involved in several things about the fintechs. Fintech is very important to us nowadays. So that's why we starting to focus on the startup. But it's a very important thing that when you talk about the bank industry, we relating to the trust, right? So when we have to work with the startup, so this is a very important thing, how we can access to the customer with the trust. So main focusing point that when we look to the startup, the point that the startup has to be thin is mean that you have to work on the bank, and the bank has to focus on the customer and how we can deal with the startup. It's very interesting thing this year that the Mizuho try to not only focus in Japan, because Japan is very successfully for Mizuho right now. We work with several startups in Japan. So now we just announced this year, we moved to Asia, especially Southeast Asia. So this is the opportunity that we can work with the startup in Asia also.
Okay, it sounds like the bank is moving. I think the fintech is something very hot, right? Let me pick on that one a little bit further. How do you see the startup in this region from the bank point of view?
I just touch upon the bank a bit. If frankly speaking, you have to focus two things. We work on accountability and trust, especially the Japanese bank. The one that you may possible to see like ATM failure in Thailand is very normal situation in Thailand. But in Japan, you cannot see that you let ATM failure. So this is very important thing that trust in terms of the bank, especially Japanese bank, in terms of customer service is very important. But in terms of the startup habit, you can take like failure. This is like everyone teach you that failure is one of the good experience that you can learn something new and you can be success. Even though like Jack Ma said to you, you have to face failures several times. But in terms of bank, the failure is one of the big issues to us also, that if we lost the trust, what is going on? So this is very important to us. So when we work with the staff, many things about the culture between bank and the startup come to our significant point, how we can alignment and how we can use the technology. So this is the thing that is one of the issue of for like especially Japanese bank at this moment, that we try to move on the startup to give them the opportunity because they can access new customer base for us. They can be our partner to find something new for us also. So this is very important to us.
So that experience is, if you're a startup to work with Japanese bank, you have to make sure it's not fail fast, but don't fail at all, right? So it's going to be a much more rigorous way of making sure that the implementation operations are intact,
Yes.
right? So you are looking for more of the startup that already established a certain level,
Yes.
not really.
Yeah.
Okay. Oleg, an experience in Israel and Telekom, how do you see that?
Yeah, well, generally speaking, I think that the big corporates now understand that the world is changing. And there are many reasons for that. There's a great book which is called The Second Machine Age. Actually, in the leaked Harvard Business School documents, the professors of Harvard try to ask themselves why the reputation of the MBA program is going down, whilst the MBA of Stanford, the reputation of MBA from Stanford and MIT is going up. And one of the things that they wrote is that one of the most important business books in our era has been written by Stanford and MIT, which is The Second Machine Age. I strongly suggest to you to read it. So what the book is actually saying that currently we are living the second machine revolution. The first one, which started with a steam engine, when the steam engine actually replaced the power of the muscles, it drove the humanity very strongly forward. And now, actually, we are in a very interesting point in time where the artificial intelligence and algorithms are doing the same to the brain power. So actually, the brain power is being replaced by artificial intelligence. And I think that most of the multinationals understand that, but the problem is the multinationals are not built to innovate. They are mainly built for efficiency. So the main term of multinationals be as more efficient and their structure to be more efficient, and they're not built to innovate. So startups, I think, is one of the ways out from this efficiency problem. The problem is that they are very new to this phenomenon of startups, and they are trying to chase, and the world is changing, and actually we now only see that the practices of corporate venture capital and other practices are relatively newly established. It's a new phenomenon. So I think we're still in a place where the market tries to find its way of best practices. And I'll just give you an example. In the 50s, the life cycle of a S&P 500, if you're listed on a S&P 500 list as a company, then probably you will stay on this list for 60 years. These days, you'll stay on that list maximum 17 years. So the world is changing dramatically. And again, this brings us again to the point where it's inevitable. If you want to survive, you need to innovate. And if you cannot do it internally, which most multinationals are struggling with, you must to go out. And again, the path to go out, there are various things that you can do. How to collaborate with startups. Maybe we can discuss that as well. So what are the tracks? Just some data scattered around yesterday evening, some statistics. So how multinationals engage with startups. So 77%, this is, you can find it online. It's a recent survey done by 500 startups, which is an early investor and seed stage investor in the US. It's like YC, Y Combinator. So they did a survey among more than 100 multinationals, and this is what they found. So 77% of multinationals prefer partnerships. So what they're doing, when we're talking about partnerships with startups, we're talking mainly about vendor relationships. So the startup is actually creating someone, and the multinationals are buying it. So that's one way. Another partnership could be co-development, co-branding, marketing partnership, co-something. When you're doing something together, it can be white labeling, etc. Another track is acquisitions. So this is another track of engagement of multinationals with startups. And according to the survey, actually 60% are also doing acquisitions. So once you are finding technology that you're interested in, you're going and buying the startups. So most of the acquisitions are done for buying the technology, but some of the acquisitions, when you're finding sweet spots or actually strategic areas where you want to go in, you can also buy a startup that doesn't have established technology, but you're doing it as acqui-hire, what we call. You're actually buying the people. You want actually the founders of the startup working for you. Another track can be investments. So the multinationals, what they're doing, they establishing CVCs, corporate venture capital funds. They are also participating as LPs, limited partners in existing venture capital funds. They invest in funds of funds. And the last track is obviously accelerators. It's also a phenomena that we see more and more. Microsoft Accelerator, various accelerators that are being opened. So I think that gives you a sense of general tracks that are possible for startups to start interacting with multinationals.
Right. So you're saying when startup, when entering or talking with the corporate, have to have a right kind of directions or outcome, whether you need to understand whether the corporate is planning to take your people, like buy your company just to get the people to work for them, or actually really want to co-creating with the startup. So that's something that startup need to be aware of and try to read out from the corporates. Is that correct? Right?
Yes, I think so. I think it's also a golden age for startups to collaborate with multinationals, because many of the, like we spoke before, what we discussed, multinationals are currently under pressure to innovate. They understand that everything is changing, and they see the startups as a solution for a big problem. So actually, but the results are quite disappointing. Again, a few fun facts. Just some data is scattered around. So when multinationals are engaging with startups, and we're talking about big multinationals, so only 9% of the multinationals actually have more than 50 pilots a year with a startup, meaning that a huge multinational doesn't approach more than 50 startups a year, which is a very small number. If we're talking about VCs and big VCs, or in Israel at least, modest VCs being approached by 1,000 startups, and they normally invest in 1% of that. So it's a relatively small percentage for multinationals, which are huge corporations, in terms of working with startups. Only for 20% of multinationals, it takes more than 6 months to start engaging with a startup once they already know that they want to collaborate with a startup. Another problem is that less than 25% of the pilots, when you already selected the startup and you're running a small amount of pilots, less than 25% of pilots actually end up with products that could be taken to the market. And I'm not talking about success rates of these products, right, just about the fact that you can take a product and take it to the market. And another problem is that, again, the corporates, they still don't have best practices of how to work with startups. So we know that currently you have more than 10 departments in multinationals facilitating the process of working with startups. I'll just name a few of those. So you have, for deal execution, to source the startups, to deal sourcing and engagement with the startup, you have a business development department, you have the legal department, you have corporate development, investment department, you have procurement. This is just for deal execution. For technology, you have the R&D department, you have the IT department, you have product management, you have many departments. For operations, once you're already there, you have the marketing, you have the finance, you have the sales, you have this entire ecosystem of departments trying to support a startup, and we're all familiar with internal politics of big multinationals. It's very hard to achieve something or to achieve collaboration between different departments. And the more departments you have, the harder it gets. And this problem normally escalates to the levels of CEOs of multinationals. So a CEO of multinational has to actually facilitate engagement with a startup of 5 20-year-old kids. And it's a problem, I think.
Okay, so it's quite complex in the corporate to actually start up to work with, so it has to be careful about that too, right? Let's hear from Tommy on number of, what do you think about startup and the experience you have with them?
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, so we Transcosmos invested lots of the startup company. And the main focusing on the investment. So we are not venture capital. How we can build up the synergy between the startup company. The point of view from the big corporate, we need a kind of the new technology and also the speed. Yeah, the startup company has really good the speed, so to expand their operation. So they are talking about the same things. The world is changing, and so it's very fast. Yeah. So big corporate have to catch up its trend. So many technology change a lot, and also the many are the new technology coming up in the market. So yeah, we invested many startup company to build up the synergy between these companies. Yeah, that's the focusing on. Especially in the ASEAN regions, we invested like a payment solution company and O2O solution company, and yeah, some of the SNS service providers, yeah, and so on. So these are new technology is very key for the big corporate providing us a BPO service. So many clients about Transcosmos is asking us about new trend of the technology. Yeah. So that's the reason why we are not only establish the local operation center in the regions, but also invested the new startup companies.
Tell me again, when you're working with this startup, right, how do you engage with them? Is it very much like they can access information and things in the corporates, or what is the demarcations or boundary or thing that you do with them to make sure that the confidentialities or some of the things that's not?
Yeah, but this is only the simple answer. So how we can good the communication with the startup company is a key person, yeah, window person. So for me, not only doing the corporate side, but also I joined to the invested company as one of the directors, and really our engagement and also the dedicating about how I can build up the business development together with the investment portfolio.
Right, because for your company is doing business process outsourcing, BPO,
yeah.
So that probably could use some of the new innovations to
Yep.
be really a very integral part of the operations.
Yes,
startup,
exactly, yes.
Then they probably have to access your back office, back end information. With that, how do you handle that?
Yeah, so for example, some of the companies, we dispatched the engineer to the startup company, and yeah, really dedicating about the operation and execution side. And after, of course, we have lots of the know-how, how we can efficiency operation should be necessary for the startup company. So in that case, of course, we will deliver about the many solution and also the know-how to the messy operation in the startup company. But also, on the other hand, the startup companies bring to the new technology to the big corporate, the BPO service as a key technology. Yeah.
So you say that the large corporate can, like for Transcosmos, is actually helping cleaning up the back office or helping the administrations for that, which is very, very good because most of the startups are having that problem. What about in telecom in your organizations? How do you interface or engage with the startup and especially building new products?
Yeah, so I can relate to how telecom deals with the academia, how it searches for new technology in academia, and actually for some reasons multinationals are not willing or not able to do some things by themselves, whether they don't have the access to the newest technologies, whether they, for other reasons. There's actually a survey, specific, it's a research on cybersecurity, that the academia usually goes ahead of the industry in cybersecurity in terms of technology by a gap of 2 years. And the reason for that is very simple, actually. In the academia, if you have a new cybersecurity phenomena, then you'll see many researchers jumping all over it and trying to understand it and propose solutions. For the industry, just seeing something new, it's not enough. You want to see a trend, of the problem reoccurring. You want to see a customer at the end of the day. Just because something is new, you're not starting to spend R&D resources on everything that's new. And I assume that this research can be applied on other fields as well. What the researchers actually did, they found all the papers, academic papers dealing with new cybersecurity topics, and then they tried to find patents being submitted by the industry on the same topics. And they found a gap, a consistent gap of 2 years on average. And having this in mind, many multinationals want to also, besides startups, they also want to work with the academia, because the academia can solve some problems that the startup will not solve. Startups are thinking big. Sometimes you have smaller problems that you also want to solve. And then on that basis, you can collaborate with the academia to develop the technologies that you would like. It's also more cost efficient, because mainly at the academia, most of the research is being done by faculty and their students. And the students are usually less expensive than seasoned programmers going and opening startups. So in that sense, you're getting access to the newest technologies in less cost. And the last point is that some of the technologies which are already being developed are being spinned out. So once you see that the technology is viable and actually you see proofs of concept, the next stage, the next obvious stage, can be taking the students and telling them that now they're participating in new startups, if they want, obviously. You spin it out, and then you have a new entity developing technology fully owned by you. So that also can be a very interesting model, I think.
So from your organization, is you're working with academia a lot, right? But what is the percentage of taking technology and then just run it by the current employees or the people in operations, or the spin-off? What?
Yeah, well, again, if you're running a spin-off, it can run on its own. It can be fully owned by the multinational, but it's run on its own, and this way it's much more flexible in terms of management, in terms of how do you run your production, and the multinational can assist actually in all of the delivery and the marketing and all of these supporting channels, okay, access to customers, etc., introductions to big customers. Another track could be that the multinational will eventually, when the technology is fully ready, and when the startup is actually already accessing the market, it can absorb. It can absorb the startup as a new department into the multinational, which is quite similar to M&A with startups. You're just buying it out.
Right. So from the Deutsche Telekom, which is more preferable for?
Yeah, I think that there's no strict preference on this. It always depends on the circumstances and the technology and the market and the product market fit.
Do you also have the acceleration program within the organizations? Because most of telecom globally, they're somehow having a certain kind of acceleration program, one way or the other.
Deutsche Telekom, they have many programs of how to innovate. As I said in the preamble, one of the tracks is collaborating with academia. Another track that they have is partnering. So they have offices around the world for partnering, trying to scout for new technologies, maybe new startups, in order to collaborate, in order to get access to new technologies, maybe even to new markets. And another track is they have their own CVC, or corporate venture.
Corporate venture.
Yeah, exactly. Investing in new startups, and this is how, again, you get access to new technologies. And again, which track to choose always depends on the circumstances and on the team that you're working with. There's no one-size-fits-all solution, but I think that one of the recommendations to multinationals could be to work more in a portfolio-like approach. So you have to diverse your risks, just like the VC does. So if you want to collaborate with startups, I think from multinational perspective as well, it can be a good idea to invest in many startups which interest you, maybe hold smaller stakes in much more startups if you're limited in budget. But taking this approach, you're minimizing your risks, because we all know that not all startups actually succeed, right? In Israel, actually, there are statistics that only 5% of startups succeed. So you don't want to hold all your eggs in the same basket.
Okay. Then when you're back to the bank, right? What kind of engagement, I think back to the questions, how do you engage a startup? The bank want to, when you talk about the big brotherhoods, how you actually nurturing or fostering them? Is that through the investment, through the direct operations, or how do you actually do that?
Actually, we have like 2 or 3 kind method. Maybe similarly, we have like CVC. We just set up like a Mizuho fund to invest in the startup or invest in the VC. So this is the first thing. Second one, we think about the joint venture. This is a new form that we currently work on some project in Thailand about the joint venture. This is the one that we're looking for also. So I just would like to say to you, when I went to Singapore to see and to talk with many startups, they come to make a presentation to me. It's very interesting thing that they talk about how do they find the customer and what is going on. They can access to the customer, but they have lack knowledge about the expertise in finance. Just for example, when they have to make the settlement, when they have like P2P lending, how about the liquidity providers? So this is the thing that when I talk with the startup in Singapore, I can see many opportunity that bank can be one of the partner to join at the back end. Maybe they can find the customer for us and we do something with the startup. So this is a very interesting thing. Just for example, the Mizuho Bank in Bangkok, we are only corporate bank. We talk only B2B, mainly B2B. But when we talk about the retail banking, this is one of our limitation now. But if we can join with the startup and they can access to the customer, and the startup, maybe they cannot do like well KYC, CDD, so this one they can come back to the bank. We can provide some service. This is a kind of, we can be like joint venture or we can be like a partner. When you talk about the thing in fintech, you just talk about disrupting in terms of payment, in terms of lending. But that one is really focused in retail. You have to understand that one first. And when you talk about the payment, nowadays you still not fully use like cryptocurrency. So it means that back end you have to make some settlement. So this is still be one of the chance of the bank to look to how to work with the startup as the partner. Instead that we try to buy them. Very important thing that many startup in Singapore talk with me that most of the bank, after work with them for a while, they try to buy them and take them. And that's reduce their speed, reduce their innovation, reduce their entrepreneurship. So that is not good way. But if you try to look to, we provide certainly some platform in finance, expertise in finance, and let them do and get customer. And that is the one that we think about. And this is one of the philosophy of Mizuho also. So that we better work with them as the partnership. This is the thing that, and as I mentioned from the beginning, the one that we have to have like leakage. It means that we have really to focus whether failure is really thing that we have to let them try. But on the other hand, we have to take balance in terms of the bank. So this is the very, very important thing.
Because this is a world phenomenon where all the finance industries are changing very fast and people don't know where it's changing to, right? And you talk about connecting with the startup, it probably, in the future, maybe bank doing all the back end, all compliance, everything else, the product, and then the startup probably be reaching B2C kind of thing. That might be an approach, okay? Unfortunately, I think our time is running out and it's too short. Anyway, maybe the last word from the panelists on, let's say, addressing what would you be recommending the corporates and recommending the startup? I don't know, because maybe be mixed in here. What would there be if the startup want to work with corporate? What should they prepare themselves? And the corporate to work with startup, as you said, there are 10 different departments. There is no way the startup can go through all those corporate politics and things. It's going to be too much hustle. So what would the corporate should prepare themselves from to work with startup effectively? Right? I think maybe each of them, maybe from you first.
Yeah, money and human. That's all. Yeah. So a big corporate can provide us really good resources and asset to the startup company. Of course. As according to our experiences, so the startup company has a really good mind and also the good speed. But on the other hand, so they have limited resources and asset. So we can collaborate with the startup company. And on the other hand, so point of view from the big corporate, so we need innovation and the new technology to expand about the original domain service. Yeah, so we are really pretty much open, so collaborate with the startup company. And also, after building about our platform in the ASEAN regions, we can collaborate with a big corporate too. So we can provide a B2B service, not only the startup company, but also the big corporate side as well.
Okay. Yeah. Please, Oleg.
Yeah, so for corporates, I think that most of the points were already discussed, but let me highlight the most important ones. So for corporates, I think it's very important to streamline the process of engaging with startups. So maybe opening specific departments which will collaborate for the startup or streamline the process vis-a-vis other departments of the corporate. Opening accelerators or incubators is also a good idea for corporates, like Hubraum, for example, that Deutsche Telekom did. This is how you get access to very, very early stage startups. I think it's also important to define specific KPIs when you're engaging with startups. What should be considered as success? What we should consider as failure? If the technology was delivered and it works flawlessly, but the product fails, is it a success? Is it a failure? These types of things need to be clearly defined prior to engaging with a specific startup in a specific circumstances. For the startups, I think that they should consider the corporate track as well, because many startups, they don't look at the corporates right now. They at best see corporates as their customers, as their clients. But I think that it's a mistake, because big corporates, take Microsoft for example. Microsoft is installed in, I think, 97% of businesses around the world. So they are the vendor of 97% of businesses in the world. They have access to many, many customers. And if you're choosing the corporate track, if you are being approached by CVC or by a partnering program, I think it can be an extremely valuable resource for a startup. It can serve as an accelerator. It can actually open new markets. So you should be considering this approach as well for engagement with startups.
Okay, good. Suphaporn, please.
Okay, I think very similar thing that just for example, like Mizuho, we're starting to have like a new division that can work with the startup very easily, like we call like digital innovation. So this is a very important thing, not only for like startup in terms of in the organization itself. Is the bank. We also have our employee to be the startup in the company also. This is very important. You should not only look outside startup, but you better promote the startup within your organization also. So that's why it can be speed up the communication between the startup and the corporate side. This is the first important thing. You're gonna cut down so many bureaucratic layer that you have to talk like several or 10 division before come to the conclusion. The secondly, that is really important for the startup, especially if you have to work with the bank. You have to understand what is the culture of the bank. You have to understand the philosophy of the bank. So this is a very unique thing that we have to talk about, because bank now, we have our own also. Not only startup, we have like the thing that we call fintechs. Not the thing that we focus on new customer or financial inclusive. but we also focusing how to reduce the cost. So that's why the blockchain come to the mind of the bank nowadays. So when you do something new and you would like to talk with the Mizuho, this is a good opportunity that you can contact either in Bangkok or either in headquarters in Tokyo also. This is the time for you that one very important thing you have to make your very brave to talk, open the opportunity to talk, no matter how it's very difficult, but you have to try to open yourself and talk, open your opportunity. So this is the thing that you have to put yourself on it. That's all.
So it seems like it's a golden opportunity for a startup nowadays. The only point is the startup had to actually look out for, find out opportunities, be able to be a trust partner, be able to work and then innovate and helping corporate to grow and make sure that they don't absorb into part of the corporates, okay? Before we wrap up, maybe is there any one or two questions from the floor, from the audience that would like to ask the panelists, please?
Anybody would like to ask a question? ท่านใดมีคำถามอยากที่จะเรียนถามทุกท่านบนเวทีไหมคะ
Okay.
Okay.
Maybe after the panel. So I'd like to thank you all the panelists and all the audience. Give a round of applause to the panel, please. Thank you very much.
And most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, please give a big round of applause. Thank you, our distinguished moderator, Mr. Chaimongkoltrakul Tuchinda, Director of Suphaporn, Thailand. Thank you very much. Indeed, all panelists, and thank you for your valuable insight sharing with us today. And I'm sure that we found this panel conversation very interesting and engaging, that we can find many wonderful points that startup and big corporate can working together for the brighter future. ถือว่าเรื่องราวที่ทุกท่านได้รับฟังเมื่อสักครู่นี้นะคะกับการเสวนาทำให้เราเข้าใจค่ะว่าการทำงานระหว่างสตาร์ทอัพใหม่กับองค์กรระดับยักษ์ใหญ่เนี่ยเราสามารถที่จะทำงานร่วมกันได้ในแง่ใดบ้างเพราะว่าองค์กรขนาดใหญ่เนี่ยก็จะมีการปรับตัวแล้วก็มองหาโซลูชันใหม่ๆที่สามารถเข้ามาปรับปรุงหรือว่าปรับประยุกต์ใช้ในการทำงานทั้งในแง่ของการให้เงินสนับสนุนการทำงานร่วมกันนะคะที่สำคัญเนี่ยนวัตกรรมและไอเดียจากสตาร์ทอัพเหล่านี้ก็จะไปสร้างความเปลี่ยนแปลงให้กับทุกองค์กรได้มากขึ้นอย่างไรแล้วค่ะในการจัดงาน Startup Thailand 2017 Scale Up Asia นี้ถือว่าเป็นโอกาสที่จะเกิดขึ้นสำหรับผู้ประกอบการรวมทั้งสตาร์ทอัพหน้าใหม่แล้วก็คนที่มีไอเดียถ้ามีของอยู่แล้วคุณลองเสนอไอเดียมานะคะเพราะว่าเรามีเรา Venture Capital Investor ที่จะค้นหาไอเดียแล้วก็มองหาความสามารถเพื่อที่จะทำงานร่วมกันค่ะอีกสักครู่หนึ่งนะคะบนเวทีทุกท่านจะได้พบกับการเปิดตัว Startup Thailand Entrepreneurs Under 35 ค่ะมีเรื่องเล่ากันมาว่าในปัจจุบันนะคะสตาร์ทอัพที่มีอายุเฉลี่ยเนี่ยน้อยกว่า35ปีซึ่งพวกเขาได้สร้างปรากฏการณ์และก็สร้างความสำเร็จด้วยเดี๋ยวมาติดตามเรื่องราวของพวกเขาการบนเวทีนี้อีกสักครู่หนึ่งนะคะว่ามุมมองของพวกเขานั้นแง่มุมอะไรที่สร้างความสำเร็จให้กับพวกเขากันค่ะ Well, ladies and gentlemen, coming up next